Welcome, beautiful souls, to Tales of Love, your escape into the world of romance, desire, and unforgettable passion. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear is more than just a story. It's an experience. Tonight, I promise you an intoxicating tale of forbidden attraction, stolen glances, and a night that could change everything. Our story begins with her, an ambitious woman working tirelessly in a high-powered corporate world, where late nights and endless deadlines were all too familiar. She had always been diligent, focused, and careful to maintain boundaries. But when her boss invited her to his penthouse suite late one evening to go over a few details, she couldn't shake the strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't unusual for him to demand late meetings. He was, after all, a man who lived and breathed success. But tonight felt different. His tone had been softer, almost teasing, when he told her, "Why don't you come by my place? We'll have more privacy to go over this project." Her curiosity and nerves wrestled inside her as she rode the elevator up to the very top floor of the glass skyscraper. The penthouse button glowed beneath her fingertip, and with each passing second, her heart raced faster. When the elevator doors slid open, she was greeted by a sleek hallway, silent except for the soft hum of the city outside the windows. She walked down to the double doors, pressed the buzzer, and before she could second-guess herself, the door opened. There he was, her boss. Tall, confident, and devastatingly handsome in a way that made her knees weaken. He wasn't in his usual suit this time. Instead, he wore a crisp white shirt, the top two buttons undone, his sleeves casually rolled up, revealing strong forearms. A glass of red wine dangled lazily from his hand. "Come in," he said, his voice low, velvet smooth, yet commanding in the way only he could manage. She stepped inside, immediately enveloped by the intoxicating scent of him, clean, sharp cologne mixed with something warmer, something masculine. The penthouse was breathtaking, all glass walls and city lights stretching endlessly below them. But it was his presence that made the air thick, charged. "I thought we'd go over the presentation in a more relaxed environment," he said, gesturing toward a table where his laptop sat open. But his eyes lingered on her a moment too long, sweeping over her fitted dress, the curve of her legs, the delicate line of her neck. Her pulse jumped. She forced a smile, setting her bag down and sitting at the edge of the leather sofa. "Of course. I'm ready whenever you are." He set the wine glass down and leaned against the counter, his gaze steady, unreadable, but there was a spark there, something playful, something dangerous. "I have to admit," he said after a pause, "I'm impressed by you. Not just your work, though that's exceptional, but the way you carry yourself. Focused, determined, always composed." His lips curved slightly. "Though, I can't help but wonder if you're always this composed, even outside the office." Her breath caught. His words lingered in the air, heavy with implication. The room was quiet, save for the muffled hum of the city below. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her throat dry. I try to be professional." He tilted his head, moving closer, his footsteps slow, deliberate. "Professional," he repeated softly, as if tasting the word. "Yes, I've noticed." But sometimes his voice dropped lower, sending a shiver through her. Sometimes professionalism hides what someone truly wants. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the world outside those glass walls seemed to vanish. Her heart pounded as he stopped in front of her, close enough that she could catch the faintest whiff of his cologne mingled with the bold notes of his wine. His gaze was unyielding, drawing her in, daring her to look away. She didn't. He reached across her to grab the laptop from the table, his arm brushing against her shoulder, the heat of his body radiating against her skin. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. "Let's take a look," he said, his voice casual, though his proximity told another story. He settled on the sofa beside her, their thighs nearly touching, and opened the laptop. But instead of focusing on the screen, he angled himself toward her, watching her reaction more than the slides on display. She tried to steady her voice. These numbers are projections based on the last quarter. If we adjust the... He cut her off with a soft chuckle, shaking his head. You really are remarkable. Even now, with the city lights painting you in silver and gold, you're still talking about numbers. His hand brushed lightly against her wrist, deliberately, making her shiver. Do you ever stop working? Her lips parted, but no sound came. His touch lingered, his thumb tracing a slow circle over her skin, grounding her and unraveling her at the same time. I try not to mix business with, she trailed off, her voice faltering. With pleasure, he finished, his tone rich with unspoken promise. The words hung between them, charged, impossible to ignore. She swallowed, her pulse racing. The right answer, the safe answer, was to laugh it off, to steer the conversation back to the project. But the warmth in his eyes, the closeness of his body, the way his hand now covered hers, made the safe answer vanish. The city lights outside twinkled like stars, as if the entire skyline was holding its breath, waiting. She managed a whisper. And what if sometimes they overlap? His jaw tightened, a flicker of restraint flashing across his face, but it melted quickly into something else, something darker, more magnetic. He leaned in, his lips hovering dangerously close to hers, his breath warm against her skin. You know, he murmured, I've imagined this. You. Here. Just like this. His voice was a confession, low and raw. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. She wanted to resist, to remind herself this was her boss, her career on the line. But the way he looked at her, with hunger, admiration, and desire all tangled together, made it impossible to pull away. Her hand, almost against her will, lifted and brushed lightly against his shirt sleeve, feeling the strength beneath. The simple touch was electric, igniting every nerve in her body. His gaze dropped to her lips, and for a moment, he hesitated, giving her the chance to step back, to choose. But she didn't move. And then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was slow at first, deliberate, tasting, exploring. His lips pressed firmly against hers, coaxing rather than demanding, as if he wanted to savor every second of this forbidden indulgence. Her hands trembled, then rose to his chest, clutching the fabric of his shirt as the dam inside her broke. He deepened the kiss, his hand sliding up to cradle the back of her neck, his thumb stroking the soft line of her jaw. The world spun, the city outside forgotten, as heat pulsed through her veins. When they finally broke apart, their breaths mingled, ragged, desperate for more. This, she whispered, her voice hoarse. This is wrong. His lips curved into a wicked smile. Then why does it feel so right? Her breath trembled as his words sank in. Wrong, yes. Forbidden, yes. But the way his mouth had just claimed hers left her body humming with a need she couldn't fight. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and when his fingers trailed from her jaw down to the delicate hollow of her throat, her pulse leapt beneath his touch. Tell me to stop, he whispered, his lips brushing the sensitive shell of her ear. And I will. But her silence was its own answer. Her hand slid upward, curling into the open collar of his shirt, tugging him back to her lips with a hunger she no longer cared to hide. This time the kiss wasn't gentle, it was fire. His tongue tangled with hers, urgent and commanding, as though he'd been holding back for far too long. She melted into him, her body pressed against his, her fingers clutching his shirt until the buttons strained. He groaned softly against her mouth, his hands exploring now, sliding down her arms before gripping her waist and pulling her firmly onto his lap. She gasped, her skirt riding up as her thighs straddled him, heat surging through her core at the sudden closeness. God, he muttered against her lips, his hands tightening on her hips. You have no idea what you do to me. Her reply came in a whimper as his mouth left hers and trailed along her jawline, down the column of her throat. His tongue traced her skin slowly, possessively, making her arch her back and tilt her head to give him more. The sensation was dizzying, every nerve alive, begging for more. Her hands moved instinctively, slipping past his open collar to feel the smooth heat of his chest beneath. His muscles flexed under her touch, his breath shuddering as she explored him. When her nails grazed lightly against his skin, his grip on her tightened, a low growl vibrating in his chest. "You're playing with fire," he warned, though his lips curved against her throat, hungry and unyielding. "Then let me burn," she whispered, shocking herself with the boldness of the words. His eyes snapped back to hers, darkened with lust, and before she could breathe another word, he stood in one swift motion, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. She gasped, her arms wrapping tightly around his neck as he carried her across the penthouse, her legs clinging to his waist. The city lights cast them in a silver glow as he pressed her against the wall, his mouth crashing back onto hers, devouring her with unrestrained passion. His hands roamed with purpose, sliding up her thighs, gripping her as though he couldn't bear an inch of space between them. Her body burned under his touch, every kiss, every stroke fanning the flames higher. She had never felt so wanted, so consumed, and it drove her wild. His mouth returned to her throat, then lower, brushing against the edge of her dress. She shivered, her head falling back against the wall, her lips parting on a desperate moan. "You taste," he murmured between kisses, his voice raw, "better than I ever imagined." Her nails dug into his shoulders as his lips traced fire down her collarbone. She could feel his restraint unraveling, each movement rougher, needier than the last. And she wanted it all, his hunger, his dominance, his surrender. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Don't stop." And the look in his eyes told her he had no intention of stopping now. Her whispered plea, "Don't stop," shattered the last of his restraint. With a deep, growling kiss, he pulled her away from the wall and carried her toward the sprawling leather sofa, laying her down with a tenderness that contrasted the wild hunger burning in his eyes. He hovered above her, his breath heavy, his body taut with desire, giving her one last chance to change her mind. But she only reached up, sliding her hands down his chest, tugging at the buttons of his shirt. That was all the permission he needed. His shirt hit the floor first, revealing the chiseled lines of his torso, his muscles shifting under the glow of the city lights. She couldn't help but run her fingers over his skin, savoring the heat of him. He groaned at her touch, dipping his head to capture her mouth again, kissing her hard, deep, as though he couldn't get enough. Her own clothes followed, each layer peeled away slowly, deliberately, his hands and lips worshipping every inch of exposed skin. By the time she was bare beneath him, she was trembling with anticipation, her body aching with need. He paused for a moment, his hand cupping her cheek, his eyes locking with hers. "Are you sure?" he whispered, the intensity in his gaze almost undoing her. Her answer came not in words, but in the way she pulled him down to her, her lips finding his in a kiss so fierce it left no room for doubt. And then there was no holding back. Their bodies moved together in a rhythm that was both frantic and perfect, every touch, every gasp, every moan blending into something primal and beautiful. The penthouse filled with the sound of their passion, the city beyond them a blur of lights as they lost themselves in each other. He was commanding, powerful, yet achingly gentle when it mattered, his hands exploring her with reverence even as his hunger consumed them both. She gave herself to him completely, surrendering to the heat, the urgency, the forbidden ecstasy of the moment. Their movements quickened, passion reaching a fever pitch, until with a shattering cry, the world broke apart around them. Their climax crashed over them in waves, fierce and overwhelming, leaving them both breathless and trembling in each other's arms. Silence followed, broken only by their ragged breaths. He pressed his forehead to hers, his thumb stroking along her cheekbone, his voice husky when he finally spoke. "I've wanted you for so long," he confessed, his lips brushing hers in a softer, lingering kiss. Her heart ached at the truth in his voice, her body still thrumming from the intensity of what they had shared. She smiled faintly, curling into his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. Outside, the city glittered, but inside the penthouse, the world had narrowed to just the two of them, bodies entwined, secrets shared, passion spent, but still simmering beneath the surface. She knew the world beyond these walls might judge them, that tomorrow could bring complications, doubts, or even regrets. But tonight, in this forbidden cocoon of desire, she allowed herself to simply feel,
To want.
to surrender. And as she drifted against him, his arms holding her close, she thought to herself that some nights, no matter how forbidden, were worth every risk. And so ends tonight's tale, my dear listeners. If you enjoyed this passionate escape into the boss's penthouse briefcase fire, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us here at Tales of Love for more unforgettable stories of romance, desire, and intimacy. Until next time, may your nights be filled with passion and your days with love.